The morning commute starts with the same old ghost story, the Ice Princess. 15 guys have tried their luck, and 15 guys have been left frozen solid on this platform. Even the soccer club star got benched by a single look. Minori watches from the edge of the crowd as the train doors hiss open, revealing the girl whose cold aura is apparently enough to give a guy a mental breakdown. Inside, it's a sweltering, rattling metal box. The heat sticks to your skin and the commute stretches out like a life sentence. But for Minori Souta, this is exactly where he wants to be. Tucked away in the corner, a professional bystander watching the world go by. He doesn't mind the heat as long as he has his front row seat to the daily routine. She's there every morning, a crystalline vision that everyone is terrified to touch. Some brave soul tries to break the ice, leaning in with a nervous question about her school. She doesn't even blink. She just turns that frostbitten gaze on him until he crumbles, muttering a hurried, "Sorry for bothering you." To everyone else, she's an idol or an actress from a different world. Minori knows better than to reach out, but he sees the things the crowd misses. While the rest of the car is buried in their phones, he notices a shift in the air, a heavy presence moving through the crowd toward the seats where an elderly woman sits ignored. A shadow falls over the seating area. The boy nearby flinches, expecting a confrontation, but the voice that rings out isn't cold, it's clear, soft, and impossibly gentle. She leans down toward the grandmother, her usual wall of ice nowhere to be found. "Granny, please sit here." On another day, the train is chaos and crying babies. The mother is frantic, trying to hush her child, while the other passengers scowl at the noise. But then Shinonome lowers her book. She doesn't offer a lecture, she offers a smile so radiant it feels like the sun breaking through a winter sky. A soft hee-hee escapes her lips, and Minori is the only witness to the thaw. He knows he's just a face in the crowd. She'd never take someone like him seriously, so he's made a deal with himself. He'll just watch until graduation. But today, the car is packed tighter than usual. The swaying of the train feels more aggressive, and the heat is starting to boil over into something dangerous. His eyes lock onto her, and his heart stops. She isn't smiling today. Her shoulders are tight, her expression fractured by a look of quiet, growing fear. Behind her, a hand is moving, creeping toward her skirt in the shadows of the crowd. Minori's brain is screaming, but his body is still stuck in bystander mode. He hates this. He hates the silence. He draws a breath that feels like swallowing glass and lets it rip through the train car. There's a molester. The crowd jolts. The predator bolts for the door, and for the first time in his life, Minori Souta isn't just watching the scene, he's the one who ended it. By the time he gets to class, the adrenaline has been replaced by the usual teenage teasing. His friend Makisaka is already on him, joking about the ice princess who rides his train. He doesn't know about the shout or the hand in the crowd. He only knows the legend of the girl who treats every guy like a fly on her windshield. The rumors follow her from school to school, how she ignores every attempt to befriend her with a cold "I'm busy." But then Makisaka leans in, his tone suddenly sharp. "If something happened to her, you'd go and help her, right?" Minori's heart gives a traitorous thud against his ribs, but he keeps his face a mask of indifference. He brushes it off as a joke. After all, youth isn't defined by having a girlfriend, and he's a bystander through and through. He looks out the window, his voice quiet but certain. "I'm content with just looking." But as they pack up for karaoke, the lie feels a little heavier than it did this morning. The morning commute used to be a long-distance sport. I stayed in my lane. She stayed in hers, and the Ice Princess legend remained untouchable behind a wall of glass. But the rules changed the second I opened my mouth. Now the space between us has vanished. I'm not just watching anymore. I'm right here, sitting close enough to hear her breathe. I can't help but wonder, this isn't a dream, is it? The doors hiss open at the station, a mechanical exhale that matches my own lungs. We move together, a strange mismatched pair threading through the morning rush. She leads the way toward a quieter corner of the platform, the air still humming with the "what happens next" of it all. She turns, her voice low and steady as she says, "Thank you very much." This is the Ice Princess. The girl whose cool demeanor and sharp rejection of every advance has become a legend that's jumped from school to school. Standing here, the sun catching the silver blue of her hair, the nickname feels like an understatement. She's more than a rumor, she's a force of nature. And seeing her like this, she looks as beautiful as ever. The platform is a symphony of scraping shoes and distant announcements, Yet the silence between us is deafening. I search for a thread, any word to bridge the gap, but my brain has completely flatlined. I want to talk to her, to be more than a statue at her side, but the fear of causing trouble keeps my tongue locked tight. Then, she shifts, her fingers catching the edge of her blazer. The ice princess speaks first, shattering the stillness. She's fighting her own battles, trying to bridge a lifetime of keeping guys at a distance with a single trembling step. She looks me in the eye and asks, "I was thinking of talking if you're okay with it, Minori-kun." It's a peace offering, and the sheer weight of it makes my heart hammer against my ribs. We are two disaster zones in matching uniforms. She's standing there, clutching her bag, wondering what on earth people are supposed to talk about in the real world. I'm no better. My conversational stats are at 0. When I admit that I don't exactly have a black belt in talking to girls, she confesses she's just as lost outside her family's circle. We're both starting from scratch. I throw out the standard icebreaker, and her answer explains everything about that untouchable aura. She doesn't just have hobbies. She has disciplines. Japanese traditional dance, tea ceremony, and flower arrangement. The image of her with a fan, graceful and precise, fits the legend perfectly. It's elegant, it's intimidating, and it's exactly who I thought she was. When she asks about me, my answer feels like a lead weight. Just anime and manga, nothing that requires a kimono or a centuries-old tradition. I wait for the dismissal, the cold ice princess gaze to return, but it never comes. Instead, she leans in, her eyes softening as she insists, "I think those are fine works of art." The station announcement cuts through our conversation, a reminder that the world doesn't stop for awkward teens on platforms. Her stop is here. She gathers herself, turning back one last time as the doors prepare to open. She doesn't see a bystander or a weirdo who watches from afar. She just looks at me and says, "You're kind, Minori-kun." And then, she smiles. Not the polite, distant curve of a princess, but something warm and real that lights up the entire platform. She delivers the final blow to my heart. People who can do the obvious things are few and far between. She's gone before I can even process it, leaving me standing there in a daze, finally letting out the breath I've been holding since the train doors opened. The evening rush is a blur of tired suits and school blazers, but then the train doors hiss open and the world just stops. Standing there like a recurring dream on the platform is the ice princess. She doesn't look away this time. Instead, she offers a small, genuine curve of her lips that feels like a peace treaty. She catches my eye and delivers the first blow to my bystander status. That's the second time, isn't it, Minori-kun? Inside the train, the silence isn't a wall anymore. It's a bridge. I ask about the girl from class, and Shinonome's face lights up, the typical icy mask melting into something soft and radiant. She admits they're on good terms now, and she credits me for the breakthrough. It's a strange feeling, being the catalyst for someone else's social victory. But then she hits a snag, her brow furrowing with that terrifyingly earnest focus of hers. She isn't sure if getting along is the same thing as being friends, a distinction only someone this pure-hearted would agonize over. She looks at me for an answer I don't have, her legs pressed together as she waits for clarity. "Well, let me know when you figure it out." She lifts a single finger to her lips, a gesture so simple it shouldn't be this effective at making my heart skip. It's a secret now. The word cute isn't strong enough, it's a total system failure for my brain. But before I can recover, her expression shifts back to serious. She's got something on her mind, and she's leaning in to ask it. I ask if she's tired of the constant confessions, and her answer is a blunt no. It's not arrogance, it's exhaustion. Every guy who's approached her has been outrageous, jumping straight to declarations of love without ever bothering to learn who she actually is. She just wanted a friend first, but nobody ever stuck around long enough for that. There's a heavy shadow in her eyes when she admits she doesn't have any friends she can truly trust. It's a confession that cuts right through the princess legend. She's desperate to repay me for what I did on the train, not because of a debt, but because she finally found someone who saw her as a person. Please let me do something. I tell her she doesn't owe me a thing, but Shinonome isn't the type to let it go. Finally, the chink in the armor appears. This girl, who sits at the absolute top of the school rankings, has a mortal enemy, English. She looks at me with a mix of pride and pure, unadulterated shame. I'm the top of the school except in English. She recalls a moment of pure panic when an overseas traveler asked for directions, and she, the unreachable ice princess, was left completely speechless. But it turns out she's a master of Japanese classics. She's looking for a trade, her expertise for my help with the English she can't wrap her head around. I take the deal, and her eyes widen. That small of surprise more rewarding than any school grade. We're so wrapped up in the plan that the station announcement feels like a bucket of cold water. We're already here. I find myself staring at the train window, the realization hitting me like a physical weight. Time flies when I'm with you. We agree to start another day. She offers a small wave and a promise to see me tomorrow, her expression softening into that quiet, private smile as the train prepares to leave. The clang of the doors echoes across the station tiles, sealing away the warmest conversation I've ever had. Standing alone on the platform, the silence feels heavy. It's a new kind of lonely, the kind that only happens after you've tasted something better, but then tomorrow arrives. We're back on the train, and she's already impressed with my basics, though the real lesson is about to begin. She dives into the lesson, her explanations way clearer than any teacher I've ever had. But I'm not listening to the words anymore. All I can feel is her shoulder inches from mine, the warmth of her presence radiating through my blazer. My heart is working overtime, hammering a single thought into my skull. She's so close. Then there's the smell, a faint, clean scent that definitely isn't the train's stale air. Is it perfume? Shampoo? Whatever it is, it's currently short-circuiting my entire nervous system. I'm staring, dazed, until she turns her head and catches me. Minori-kun, do you understand? I've never been more embarrassed to be alive. My heart won't calm down, it's practically trying to escape my chest. She just sighs, assuming the Japanese classics are too tough, and offers to explain it again in simpler terms. Later that night, in the quiet of her own room, she closes her textbook with a tiny, secret smile. That was fun. Class is barely in session before Eiji leans over with the kind of look that usually precedes a disaster. He flashes two fingers like a peace sign, but the vibe is all wrong. I have bad news and bad news. The rumor mill is already churning, and the headline is lethal. It seems the untouchable ice princess was spotted looking cozy with some guy on the train. Minori's heart hits his shoes. He's the guy, but the school thinks the legend has officially been claimed. Eiji isn't buying the bystander act for a second. He leans in closer, practically sniffing the air like a bloodhound on a trail. Minori attempts to play it cool, burying his face in his arm as the heat rises to his neck, but Eiji's instincts are terrifyingly sharp. He catches a whiff of something that isn't cheap school soap and just blunts out the question, "Are you a dog?" Apparently, Minori isn't just acting happy, he's literally wearing the scent of a woman. The denial is as flimsy as a wet paper towel. Minori struggles to categorize their relationship as just friends, but his face is a neon sign flashing the truth. Eiji just watches the blush deepen with a satisfied grin. He doesn't even need a confession when the evidence is written in every twitch of Minori's eyes. You're easy to read. Eiji asks if he's being played, but Minori's thoughts drift to the girl behind the ice persona. He's seen the side of her that smiles at babies and worries about her English scores. She has no reason to lie to him, and more importantly, she trusts him. That weight in his chest isn't just attraction, it's a quiet, growing responsibility. The tension breaks when Eiji realizes Minori's romantic life isn't the only thing in trouble. Suddenly, the interrogation turns into a plea for academic survival. Minori fights to keep his distance, but Eiji knows exactly how to poke at his friend's soft spots. The real bad news? Eiji and his girlfriend Kirika are staring down the barrel of a failed semester. If they don't pass the next test, they're repeating the year. It's a desperate situation, and they need the class's most reliable bystander to act as their academic lighthouse. Minori relents, agreeing to a weekend study marathon at his place. Eiji's reaction is predictably over the top, hands clasped together like he's witnessing a divine miracle. You're a god, the schedule is locked in, and for the first time Minori's isolated weekend is officially booked solid. On the train ride home, the atmosphere shifts. Shinonome is fidgeting, her usual regal composure cracking around the edges. She's working up to something, her fingers twisting as she finally finds her voice. She wants to know about the weekend. She wants a study session of their own. Minori has to deliver the blow. He's already committed to Eiji. He watches the light dim in her eyes, a tiny flicker of rejection that hurts him more than it probably hurts her. Seeing the ice princess look genuinely dejected makes his own heart ache with a sharpness he wasn't prepared for. Before he can even offer a workaround, she stops him. She isn't angry, she's understanding, which somehow makes it worse. She takes the blame for the bad timing, masking her disappointment with that stoic grace. Minori can only watch her, feeling the weight of the missed opportunity. He won't let it end on a sad note. He promises to make it up to her, to fit in study time whenever she wants. The train doors hiss shut, a physical barrier between them for the night, but the promise hangs in the air like a tether. Monday rolls around, and the train platform feels different. The air is crisp, and when Shinonome spots him, the mask doesn't just slip, it vanishes. Morning, Shinonome, she's smiling, a genuine bright expression that has nothing to do with her reputation and everything to do with the guy standing in front of her. They dive straight into the books. Minori offers to help with her English, and the way her face lights up is almost dangerous to his composure. She's been smiling so much lately. It's a good thing, he tells himself, even if it makes it impossible for him to think straight. The train car is crowded, pushing them into each other's orbit. Minori points out a translation, but his brain is short-circuiting. She's closer than she was last week. He can smell the soft scent of her hair, feel the radiator heat of her shoulder against his arm. Isn't she closer to me than last week? He's hyper-aware of every inch of space left between them. Then the train jolts, a sharp, violent sway that sends the entire car leaning. Shinonome loses her footing, a small eek escaping her as she pitches forward. Minori reacts on instinct, his arms locking around her to keep her upright. The world stops. The noise of the tracks, the chatter of commuters, it all fades into the sudden, crushing reality of her weight against his chest. It's the ultimate love comedy cliché, and right now, it's the only thing that's real. The moon is high over the temple gates, but inside, the girl known for her frozen composure is currently a puddle of restless anxiety. Usually, Shinonome is the picture of composure, but tonight, the memory of Minori-kun smiling with that other girl is a thorn she can't pull out. She stares at the ceiling, her heart aching with a jealousy she doesn't have a name for yet. Her fingers grip the duvet tight as she whispers to the empty room, "I'm such a terrible person." The morning train rattles with its usual rhythmic clatter, but the air between Minori and Shinonome is heavy enough to sink the car. He tries to offer a polite word about her studies, but she's miles away, staring at nothing with a hollow look in her eyes. He watches the side of her face, the silence stretching until it becomes a physical weight. He can't help but wonder, I wonder if I made her mad. Minori walks through the school halls, his head down as he spirals. He tells himself he's no different from the creeps who stare at her, that his interest in her isn't some noble protection, but something selfish. He's trying so hard to be the invisible bystander again, but the memory of her voice is a tether he can't cut. He doesn't notice the world around him, only the sinking feeling that his quiet life is officially over. Back at her own school, Shinonome is a ghost at her desk until Hayama-san bursts into the room like a localized hurricane. No time for polite greetings or ice princess posturing today. Hayama grabs her arm, her eyes sparkling with an agenda that doesn't involve Japanese classics. Before Shinonome can even process the interruption, she's being hauled out of the room with a cheerful, "Just come." They stop in the quiet shade of the schoolyard. Hayama doesn't dance around the subject. She leans in, her gaze pinning Shinonome against the trees. The supposedly untouchable honor student tries to play it off, claiming nothing happened, but her trembling hands give her away. Hayama smiles, a knowing, slightly devious look in her eyes as she delivers the diagnosis. "You're in love." The word love hits Shinonome like a physical blow. Her face goes from porcelain white to a frantic, burning crimson in seconds, her ice princess mask shattering into a million pieces. Hayama just laughs, enjoying the spectacle of the untouchable idol losing her cool. When she asks if they fought, Shinonome finally snaps back with a desperate, "He's not my boyfriend." Hayama's laughter dies down into something softer, more sincere. She admits she's just happy to see this side of her friend, not the perfect student, but a girl with blood flowing through her veins. Shinonome huffs, her shoulders finally dropping from their defensive hunch. It's a terrifying realization, but she can't deny the truth of it anymore. She's human, and she's hurting. Hayama leans against the railing, her finger pointed like she's lecturing a junior. She warns that keeping these feelings bottled up will only rot from the inside out. Shinonome looks down, her hand drifting to her chin in a rare moment of vulnerability. She knows she can't keep hiding behind the rumors. She finally looks up, her eyes clear for the first time all day. My lips are sealed, she thinks. But her heart is already wide open. The story spills out, the train rides, the shared studies, and the mysterious friend who seemed to be watching her. Shinonome recounts the details with a precision that reveals just how much she's been overthinking every single interaction. Hayama listens, her eyes narrowing as she pieces together the puzzle of Minori Souta and his protective little world. Hayama lays it out plain. Shinonome is confused because she's never felt this before. She asks the million-dollar question, has her heart ever gone thump-thump because of him? Shinonome's hand goes to her chest, feeling the frantic rhythm that has become her new normal. She doesn't even have to say it out loud. Her wide, shimmering eyes give the only answer that matters. I guess it did. For years, she lived by her father's rigid code. Never show your weakness to others. It was the foundation of the Ice Princess, a wall built of discipline and silence. But around Minori, that wall hasn't just cracked, it's dissolved. She realizes that the uneasiness only disappears when she's near him, a betrayal of everything she was taught that somehow feels more right than any lesson she's ever learned. Hayama, ever the provocateur, suggests that if it's this intense, maybe it's not just love, maybe it's marriage material. Shinonome nearly jumps out of her skin, her hands flying to her mouth. Marriage, she squeaks, her brain short-circuiting at the sheer speed of Hayama's logic. It's absurd, it's premature, and yet the blush on her face says she's already subconsciously picked out the flowers. They pivot to the boy sitting across the aisle. Hayama guesses that Minori probably bragged to his best friend about being on good terms with the legendary Ice Princess. It makes sense guys talk, but it also means that the boy's presence wasn't an accident. He was there to see if the rumors were true, to see if the cold-hearted idol really had changed for his friend. Hayama uses a boxing term that leaves Shinonome blinking in confusion. It feels like he's throwing a jab at you, she explains. A test of her character, a way to see how she'd react to seeing Minori with someone else. Shinonome clutches her blazer, the realization sinking in that her jealousy wasn't just a random feeling, it was the exact reaction they were looking for. The theory is simple but effective. Eiji wanted to see if she'd get jealous. If she approached Minori aggressively, they'd learn everything they needed to know about her personality. Shinonome stands frozen as the pieces click together. Her sleepless night, her heartache, her panic, it was all a result of a well-placed jab. She whispers to herself, jealous, the word tasting strange and bitter on her tongue. But Shinonome still can't quite believe it. For Minori to feel that way, it would mean he likes her back, and she's not ready to accept that kind of hope yet. Hayama just points a finger, her grin widening. Whether Minori thought that far ahead or not doesn't change the fact that he's challenging her. He stepped into the ring, and now, it's her move. Hayama throws a mock punch into the air, her voice ringing with confidence. Why not use all your might and land a straight punch? Forget the subtle hints and the Ice Princess distance. If he's going to test her, she's going to give him an answer he'll never forget. Shinonome smiles, a genuine, determined expression that finally reaches her eyes. Okay. The last day of tests arrives, and the air inside the quiet railcar is suddenly clear. Shinonome greets Minori with a soft smile, apologizing for being so distant lately. She mentions she talked things out with a classmate, and the weight that's been dragging her down has finally lifted. Minori can only blink, relieved but completely unaware of the storm she's about to unleash. She's standing closer than usual, so close that Minori can feel the warmth of her presence. The conversation drifts to the weather forecast, a simple enough topic, but every word feels loaded with a new kind of intimacy. Minori mentions he left his clothes out to dry, and Shinonome listens with an intensity that makes him feel like he's the only person in the entire carriage. She realizes she doesn't actually know much about him, and the Ice Princess is suddenly a curious detective. Where was he born? What do his parents do? Does he have siblings? She fires off questions all the way to her station, her previous distance replaced by an almost childlike eagerness to bridge the gap between them. Minori can barely keep up with the interrogation. True to the forecast, the sky opens up. It's a torrential downpour, turning the schoolyard into a gray blur. Minori and Eiji stand at the window, staring out at the rain with a mixture of annoyance and resignation. Minori thinks of his clothes soaking on the line back home, a perfect metaphor for the way his quiet, orderly life is currently getting drenched. They make it to the gate, where Nishisawa is already waiting under a bright umbrella. She offers to help, but Minori waves it off, his mind still stuck on their shared commute. The timing is tight, and the air is thick with the scent of wet asphalt and school gossip. Eiji teases him about the umbrella, but Minori's gaze is pulled toward the street, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Suddenly, the crowd of students parting around the gate starts to buzz. There's a girl standing in the middle of the rain, looking like she stepped out of a high-fashion magazine or a dream. Heads turn, umbrellas tilt, and the whispers start to ripple through the lobby. Eiji and Nishisawa freeze, their eyes widening in shock. What's going on? Minori stares, his breath catching in his throat. It's not an idol or an actress, it's her. Shinonome is standing right there in the rain, a silver-blue vision that doesn't belong in this school or this moment. The world around him blurs into a noisy, chaotic mess, leaving only the sound of his own heart thudding against his ribs. It can't be. Eiji can only stare at the legendary ice princess standing in front of their school. This is the girl who ignores everyone, the untouchable queen of a different academic world. For her to come all this way, for her to be standing here in the rain for a student from another school, it's not just a rumor anymore, it's a revolution. She walks right up to him, the rain glistening on her hair like diamonds. There's no coldness in her gaze, no distance in her posture. She looks at Minori and offers a smile that would melt a glacier, her voice clear and sweet above the sound of the downpour. "Minori-kun, I've come to pick you up." Minori can barely stammer out her name. Behind him, Eiji and Nishisawa look like they've seen a ghost, their mouths hanging open as the social order of their school collapses in real time. But Shinonome doesn't care about the audience. She only has eyes for him, her resolve finally manifesting in a public display that leaves no room for doubt. She turns to his friends with effortless poise, introducing herself to Eiji and Nishisawa. They scramble to offer their names, Nishisawa looking like she wants to sink into the ground. Shinonome thanks them for taking care of Minori the other day, her words a graceful acknowledgement of the world he lives in. Even in the rain, she is every bit the princess, just a much warmer one. In her head, the realization is still blooming. She's never been in love before, at least, not like the stories she's read in books, but the way her heart hammers against her ribs, the way her breath catches when he looks at her, it's becoming impossible to call it anything else. If this is love, it's more powerful and more terrifying than anything she's ever faced. She knows she needs to change, to take that first step toward a world that isn't made of ice. She looks up at Minori, her gaze unflinching despite the audience watching their every move. The air is electric, the rain providing a private curtain for the words she's been practicing. "Minori-kun, I have a favor to ask you." She extends her hand, her fingers steady despite the chaos in her heart. In the middle of the crowded lobby, in front of his friends and the entire world, the ice princess delivers her straight punch. It's a request that sounds simple but carries the weight of a lifetime of solitude being cast aside. "Would you like to be friends with me?" The rain is a wall of static, but her voice cuts right through it. The girl known for her frozen distance isn't just standing there, she's reaching out into his world, her hand steady and her eyes searching. She drops the question like a direct strike to his chest. "Would you like to be friends with me?" Minori's brain has officially flatlined. Him? Friends with her? It's a concept that doesn't fit into his bystander manual. Meanwhile, Shinonome is fighting her own battle, her internal monologue racing past logic. She knows it might be wrong to use him to test her heart, but the uncertainty is burning. She needs to know if this pounding in her ribs is love or something else entirely. Around them, the school lobby is a buzzing hive of gossip, but they're in a bubble of freezing silence. He's taking too long to answer. Her confidence flickers, her eyes dropping as the weight of the rejection starts to settle. She finally manages a small, brittle whisper. "Is that a no?" He looks at her face, the genuine hurt, the raw hope, and his bystander persona just crumbles. There's no room for calculation here. He stops worrying about if he's overthinking, or if this is a trap, and asks himself the only question that matters. Does he want to be with her? The answer is already moving his arm before he can even voice it. His hand finds hers, a solid, warm anchor in the middle of the storm. As he agrees, her guarded, stoic mask doesn't just slip, it vanishes. She lights up with a smile so bright it makes the rain feel like a summer afternoon. With a joyful okay, the distance between them just stops existing. They step out into the downpour, tucked under a single umbrella that's suddenly much too small for two people. She's watching her step, but he's watching the way her shoulder brushes his. She tries to justify the ambush by saying she didn't want him to catch a cold, but the gazes of the students behind them say everything they're trying not to. The umbrella is leaning her way, and it's leaving Minori's outer shoulder at the mercy of the rain. She notices instantly. He tries to play it off, claims it's just his imagination, but he's secretly reaching his limit. There's no possible way he can get any closer to her without things becoming dangerous for his pulse. Shinonome doesn't do half measures. She steps into his space and latches onto his arm, her grip firm and her face a determined shade of crimson. The sudden weight of her against him sends Minori into a total system failure. Shinonome? Everything is touching. Her arm is locked with his. Her shoulder is pressed against his side, and their faces are glowing like heaters in the cold rain. She stammers out an excuse about it only being until they reach home, but Minori is too busy being blindsided by how cute she is when she's this flustered. They're walking in sync now, the rhythmic splash of their shoes the only other sound. She pauses, gathering her breath before taking another leap into the deep end. She asks about his plans, then delivers the invite with a blush that could melt snow. I want to have a post-exam party at your house. The reason comes out in a rush of honesty. She heard about the session he had with Makisaka and Nishisawa, and it's been gnawing at her. She looks away, her profile soft against the gray afternoon. I was jealous. She doesn't just want to study, she wants to be the one closest to him. Minori is practically vibrating. Knowing that the girl he's been watching from afar was actually thinking about him this way, it's enough to make his head spin. He doesn't even hesitate. He agrees with a grin that matches hers. Let's do it. The plan escalates instantly. She isn't just coming over, she's taking over the kitchen. The idea of a home-cooked meal from Shinonome has Minori's imagination running wild with visions of rolled omelets and octopus sausages. She catches his eye, a playful challenge in her gaze, as she tells him to look forward to tonight. She's being so assertive it's almost terrifying. She thinks back to Hayama-san, to the advice that pushed her to stop being a spectator in her own life. She's glad she took the risk, but the heat in her cheeks is a reminder that being bold is exhausting work. As they walk, he asks why she hasn't friended Hayama yet. She stops, her shoes scuffing against the brick. It wasn't about lack of opportunity or conversation. She looks at him with a clarity that's breathtaking. It's because I decided that Minori-kun will be my first friend. She's not done. She suggests they reward each other for surviving the exams, but Minori's brain is currently a blank slate. His heart is pounding so hard it's a wonder she can't hear it through the rain. Reward, he can't think of a single thing that would top just being under this umbrella with her. He asks her what she wants him to do, his voice catching. She doesn't answer right away, she just looks up at him, her eyes wide and glimmering, and raises a single finger to her lips. If she does one more thing, Minori is convinced he might actually lose his mind right here on the sidewalk. She gives him a look that's half playful and entirely lethal. That's still a secret. As she smiles, Minori feels the last of his bystander armor dissolve into the wet pavement. He looks at her and realizes with a terrifying, heart-stopping certainty, I'm going to end up falling for you. The lock clicks, and suddenly, the air in Minori's apartment feels 10 degrees heavier. It's one thing to study at school, but having his famously cold and distant classmates standing in his entryway is a reality his brain wasn't prepared to process. He manages to choke out a standard welcome, "All right, come in," while his heart tries to vibrating out of his chest. The door shuts behind them, sealing his quiet life away. Shinonome is in his house. Shinonome takes in the 1LDK with wide, curious eyes, calling it pretty big while Minori explains his parents basically live at their workplaces. It's a lonely setup, but today, the space feels cramped in the best possible way. He offers her the washroom to freshen up, and she accepts with a polite, soft, "Thank you." They settle onto the sofa, the silence stretching out like a live wire between them. Minori brings tea, his hands steady, but his thoughts are anything but. He asks if she's nervous, and she doesn't hide behind her mask this time. She looks down at her lap, her voice a whisper as she admits this is her first time visiting a friend's house. Since I'm her first friend, Minori realizes, the weight of that title hitting him harder than any exam. Minori vows to make this a memory worth keeping, but Shinonome beats him to the next move. She pats the cushion right next to her, her eyes searching his. "Can you sit beside me?" She explains it's just more reassuring when he's close. The same way it felt on the train back when he was just a stranger in the crowd. The proximity is electric, and Minori is trying to act natural when she suddenly pivots to their deal. The rewards for the exams. She fidgets, her composure finally fraying at the edges as she looks up through her lashes. "I want you to pat my head as a reward." Minori's brain stalls. A head pat? It's so simple, yet it feels like she's asking for his soul. He agrees, but she stops him for a second to explain. Her life has been a fortress of dignity and never show weakness, built on her father's strict rules. She's been the perfect daughter, the untouchable princess, for as long as she can remember. She spent her years thinking that kind of life was fine, never letting anyone see behind the ice. But then Minori stepped into her world and told her he wanted to see the real her. That one sentence shattered the glass. Now, she's standing on the other side of that confession, ready to be vulnerable. She leans forward, the silver snowflake in her hair catching the light as she makes her final admission. "Actually, I'm quite a spoiled child. It's the ultimate secret, the version of herself she's hidden from the world, and she's laying it right at his feet. She's been doing her best for so long, and now she's exhausted." She closes her eyes, waiting for the one thing she never let herself want. "I want to be spoiled by you, Minori-kun." He reaches out, his hand finally connecting with her hair, a touch so light it's almost a question, but she leans into it like it's the only thing keeping her upright. He doesn't just pat her head, he validates every ounce of effort she's put in. He tells her that her grace isn't just a gift, it's a result of her hard work. She helped him. She saved him during those study sessions, and now it's his turn to be her anchor. She looks up at him, the ice completely gone, replaced by a warmth that's almost blinding. She's not done being spoiled. She asks if she can rest against his chest for a while, and before he can even process the request, she's there, tucked under his chin, her hair smelling like flowers and rain. "Thank you so much, Minori-kun," she whispers, her voice muffled against his blazer. Minori is currently a walking heart attack. The girl who is usually so composed is letting herself be vulnerable only to him, and the bystander logic he used to live by is officially dead and buried. His heart is pounding so hard he's terrified she can feel it. This level of intimacy is a trap, and he's happily walking right into it. Eventually, the world returns. She pulls away, a little flustered, apologizing for showing such a pitiful side of herself. But Minori just shakes his head. He's glad she relied on him, and he tells her he'll do it as many times as she wants. The deal isn't just a one-time reward anymore, it's a promise. While Minori internally panics about whether he can actually handle pampering her regularly without losing his mind, Shinonome is already shifting gears. She asks about his reward, and since he can't think of anything, she takes charge. "Shall I prepare dinner first?" The girl known for her frozen heart is heading to the kitchen. She compliments his kitchen, but the vibe turns chilly real fast when she asks if he actually uses it. Minori admits to a diet of convenience store bentos and whatever he likes, and suddenly, her intimidatingly sharp demeanor is back, except this time, it's directed at his terrible health choices. She's not just disappointed, she radiates an angry, motherly aura that has Minori breaking into a cold sweat. The interrogation continues. "What about lunch on weekdays?" He mumbles something about stuffed bread from the store, and her stare becomes piercing enough to cut glass. She softens for a moment, admitting she doesn't fully understand living alone, but that doesn't mean she's letting this slide. Minori is definitely in trouble. Food is the source of life, and she refuses to let his source be high-sodium store snacks. She ties her hair back, slips into an apron, and drops a bombshell that resets the entire relationship dynamic. "I'll make your lunch and dinner every Saturday, and your bentos for weekdays too." The reward wasn't for her, it was for her to take care of him. Minori tries to wave it off, he'd feel bad. It's too much work. But she's already at the stove. She claims she likes cooking, and that making portions for two is actually easier than one. It's a transparent excuse, but the way she looks at him makes it impossible to argue. He's already in her debt. Adding daily meals to the tab feels like a one-way ticket to falling completely in love. She serves him a steaming plate of curry with a confident little smile. "I'll make sure you say you want to eat it again." It's been forever since Minori had anything this fresh or this warm in his own home. The smell of the spices fills the room, making the apartment finally feel like a home instead of just a place where he sleeps. They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and one bite of this curry has Minori's defenses crumbling. It's incredible. He blurts out a "really delicious," that has her giggling behind her hand. For the first time, they aren't ice princess and bystander, they're just two people sharing a meal. The plates are empty, and for Minori, his stomach and his heart feel equally full. It feels like forever since he's had a warm meal with someone else. As they finish up, he thanks her, but she's the one who looks grateful. She asks the million-dollar question, "Do you want to eat this again?" On one side of the scale, there's the guilt of making her work. On the other side, that amazing curry in her smile. The scale slams down on the side of his feelings. "Yeah, I do." She lights up, listing all the other dishes she can make: fish, Western food, anything he likes. She's all in. She asks one more time, making the bento arrangement official, and Minori finally surrenders. "I'll be in your care." The bystander is officially gone. He's now a man with a personal chef and a heart that belongs to the princess of the school. The lunch bell rings, the universal signal for a mad dash to the canteen. Makisaka is already in motion, expecting the usual routine of overpriced bread and crowded hallways. But Minori doesn't move. He's got that look of quiet, internal satisfaction that only comes from a secret well kept. He drops the bombshell with a straight face. "I have a bento today." Makisaka freezes like he just saw a ghost. They retreat to the roof, where the wind bites. But the contents of Minori's lap are white-hot news. It's not some sad, soggy convenience store box. This is wrapped with care, tied in a bow that screams domestic bliss. Makisaka's brain is doing backflips trying to process how the school's most untouchable girl found out Minori survives on air and apathy. He leans in, wide-eyed and buzzing, asking if the girl is a psychic. "Do you have superpowers?" Minori remembers the kitchen, the scent of spices, and the way she looked in that borrowed apron, pure, concentrated warmth. He clicks the lid open, and for a second, the rooftop smells like a five-star kitchen. It's packed to the brim with colorful sides and perfectly rolled tamagoyaki. It's a labor of love disguised as a meal. Makisaka can only stare, his own appetite suddenly feeling very, very cheap. Makisaka can't reconcile the image. The girl known for her cold and distant demeanor, the one who looks like she was carved from a glacier, actually spent her morning hovering over a stove for this guy. But as Minori takes a bite, the world slows down. The flavor is sharp and kind all at once. Even Makisaka notices the change in him. The usual bystander indifference is melting away with every mouthful of rice. Makisaka isn't letting him off the hook. He lays out the evidence like a prosecutor. She came for him in the rain, she's tutoring him, and now there's a bento. It's a full-on domestic takeover. He leans in, the teasing edge in his voice replaced by a genuine question of status. But Minori stares at the ground, his eyes shadowed, clinging to the only safety net he has left. "We aren't a couple." Minori desperately attempts to rationalize it. "She's just being nice," he tells himself, even if nice usually doesn't involve waking up at dawn to fry fish for a classmate. His face is burning, a bright red flag that Makisaka spots instantly. One more poke, one more laugh, and Minori is practically vibrating from the embarrassment of being seen so clearly. The teasing fades, leaving a heavy silence. Minori's thoughts drift to Kirika. She's a friend, easy and uncomplicated. But with Shinonome, the air feels different. It's high voltage, it's confusing. He doesn't know if this is what people call love, but he knows his heart is doing things it never did for anyone else. Makisaka stops playing. He points a finger, not to tease but to force a realization. Life moves fast, and the bystander lifestyle is a dead-end street. He poses the question that cuts through all the excuses. Who do you want to be the man standing next to the school's most unapproachable beauty? Shinonome Nagi. 10 years later, he sees her in his mind, an adult, radiant and working hard, her beauty matured into something even more breathtaking, and then he sees the man beside her, a stranger. Someone remarkable, someone who isn't him. The thought doesn't just sting, it strikes him with the force of a physical blow to the chest. He looks at his phone. His contact list is a desert AG, his parents, and that's it. It's the safe, lonely life he chose. But as the sun begins to set over the school, the silence in his pocket feels less like safety and more like a void he's finally ready to fill. The train car is a cage of rhythmic noise and swaying bodies. They stand together, the proximity making his pulse race. He doesn't want to be a bystander anymore. He takes the leap, asking for her number under the guise of convenience. His heart is in his throat, waiting for the rejection that never comes. The digital done feels more significant than any test score. She isn't just polite, she's glowing. She confesses she'd been wanting to ask him too, and seeing her this happy over a simple contact swap makes the rooftop interrogation feel a million miles away. "I'm really happy," she says, the blush on her cheeks outshining the sunset outside the window. The messages start immediately. She doesn't just text, she sends fluffy cat stickers that absolutely demolish her cold reputation. Finding out the untouchable princess is a sucker for dogs and cats is the final blow to Minori's composure. The gap between the girl the school sees and the girl in his chat is massive, and he's the only one who gets to see it. They make plans for a cat cafe, a future date hanging in the air like a promise. Back at home, Minori is trying to focus on his studies, but the ping from his phone is like a jolt of electricity. It's 8:30, and she's asking for his time. Not a text, a call. He picks up, his voice barely a whisper, and she's there. She's sitting on her bed, her hair down, away from the school and the rumors. There's no emergency, no question about homework. Just a soft, terrifyingly honest confession through the speaker. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Minori is short-circuiting. It's too much. That one line is more devastating than any physical attack. He tries to play it cool, but his internal monologue is screaming about how unfair it is for her to be this cute. He can hear her soft chuckle on the other end, a sound that feels more intimate than a touch. The distance between them vanishes. She's right there in his ear, talking about her 5 a.m. wake-ups and the Japanese dance practice she does before school. She's pushing herself for him, crafting those bentos with the same discipline she gives her family traditions. He tries to tell her she doesn't have to, but she won't hear of it. He finally says what he should have said at lunch. The food was incredible. He could eat it every day. You can practically hear her beaming through the phone. She's already planning tomorrow's menu, her voice bubbling with an excitement she usually keeps locked behind a wall of ice. They move into the future. Test results are coming out, and she wants a rematch at his place. She's asking for his favorite foods now, gathering intelligence for her next culinary assault. It's not just tutoring anymore, it's building a shared life, one Saturday at a time. It's past 9, and the silence between sentences is getting longer, more comfortable. He yawns, a physical betrayal of his exhaustion. But she's still there, her voice a soft tether. She asks if she can call again tomorrow. She's pampering him, and Minori is too tired and too happy to fight it. The call finally disconnects with a soft beep. The room is suddenly too quiet. Minori collapses onto his bed, his face buried in his pillow as the weight of the last hour hits him. He's not getting any sleep tonight. Not when the echo of her voice is still bouncing around his brain. Across town, the princess is back in her carriage. Her father notices the change, the way she's spending more time with friends. He gives his approval, oblivious to the fact that this friend is the boy currently staring at his ceiling in a daze. She stares out the window, her expression unreadable but her heart decided. Her father's advice rings in her ears: live life with no regrets. It's a dangerous command for a girl who has spent her whole life following rules. She looks down at her bag, at the space where the bento was, and makes a silent vow. She's going to keep this feeling close. She's going to make her own choices, starting with the boy who actually hears her. The call ended, but the connection didn't. Ever since they swapped numbers, the morning air feels different. The train announcements fading into the background as Minori stares at a screen that finally has her name on it. The metal doors hiss shut, a mechanical barrier, but on the other side of the glass, the distance between them is already shrinking. It's a secret shared in plain sight. Even in a crowded hallway, her fingers are busy at her desk, slipping the phone away like contraband as the text lands. She's no longer the unapproachable statue at the front of the room. She's a girl waiting for a good morning from the boy in cabin 4, for the first time. Being apart doesn't feel like being alone. The mask is slipping, and people are starting to notice. Hayama-san catches her mid-thought, eyes wide as she leans into Shinonome's personal space. Her cold exterior is melting, her expression warm and distant until the observation hits like a splash of cold water. Your cheeks look softer today? Apologies turn into admissions as Shinonome admits she was the one being unreasonable before. It's a quiet revolution in the classroom. The girl who refused everyone is now actively reaching out. One screen tap later, and the list of people allowed behind the wall grows by one. The peace doesn't last. In the corner of the room, the whispers are already gaining teeth. Hayama-san drops the bomb with a tilt of her head. watching for the ripple in Shinonome's composure. Shinonome-chan sharing an umbrella with him became quite a topic. What should we do? Instead of panic, there's a strange, quiet resolve. Shinonome stares at her phone, realizing the guy from another school is the boy who's currently one cabin away. The class is practically vibrating with curiosity, finally daring to ask the question everyone's thinking. Is it true you shared an umbrella with a guy from another school? The air in the room just turned to static. No denials, no excuses. Just a simple, devastating yes, it's true. She explains it away as a simple act of kindness for a boy who forgot his umbrella, but the way she says it makes the entire class lean in, hungry for the details of the Ice Princess's first crack. Hayama-san sees right through the kindness cover story. She leans in, testing the depth of the water, and Shinonome doesn't flinch. She just smiles, a real vulnerable look that would blind anyone watching. "You're right," she murmurs, the words landing like a heavy stone in a quiet pond. "He's precious." The significance of that word follows her throughout the day. Now, there's a new kind of panic, the "I'm going to his house tomorrow and I have nothing to wear" kind of panic. She's texting Hayama for fashion advice, her thumb hovering over the screen as she worries if her clothes are even good enough for a boy who's seen her at her most unpolished. She looks at the advice from her father, the command to live without regrets echoing in her head. It's a tall order for someone who's always been a passenger in her own life. She types out the message, a simple apology for being late, but every character feels like a choice she's finally making for herself. The station is a sea of uniforms and tired commuters, a rush of bodies under the setting sun. They find each other in the chaos, a small island of normalcy. They exchange apologies for the delay, but the real challenge is just ahead. The train is completely packed, and they're about to lose all their personal space. Minori tries to shift, to give her an inch of breathing room, but the crowd won't allow it. They're standing face to face, so close he can see the reflection in her eyes. He stammers an apology for the proximity, but she just looks up at him, the noise of the train dying away as she speaks. "I'm not scared of you, Minori-kun, because you're special." The train slams into a curve, and the world tilts. No more inches, no more breathing room. In a blur of movement, Minori is thrown forward, his arm pinning against the wall to catch himself, but his body is already pressed flush against hers. The air is sucked out of the cabin, leaving only the rhythm of two hearts racing in tandem. They're frozen. The crowd around them is just a blur of voices asking if they're okay, but Minori can't hear them over the roaring in his ears. He's looking at her, and she's looking back, her face flushed a deep crimson. Then she speaks, her voice a tiny thread of sound. "Minori-kun, please move your wrist." He's been bracing his weight on his wrist to keep from crushing her, but he's reaching his limit. Shinonome sees the strain, the way he's sacrificing himself for her comfort, and she won't have it. She reaches out, her gaze steady even as her heart hammers. "I'd hate it more knowing that you're hurting. Then I'll lean in." The train jolts again, and this time there's no bracing. He lets the momentum take him, his head coming down to rest against her, the softness of her hair against his cheek. It's not an accident anymore. It's a surrender. The world outside the window is just a streak of light, but inside this tiny space, everything has gone perfectly still. This is bad. This is terrifyingly, undeniably bad. Minori's brain is short-circuiting, every nerve ending screaming at the feel of her against him. He knows he should pull away, should find a handle, should do anything but stay here, but his body has stopped listening to logic. All he can hear is the frantic drumbeat of his own heart. He tries to move, a desperate attempt to regain some shred of distance, but her hands find the small of his back. She pulls him closer, her voice muffled against him but clear enough to stop his heart. "I'm not forcing myself so you don't need to move." She's choosing this. She's choosing him. The train continues its rhythmic sway, but neither of them is looking for an exit anymore. Shinonome's fingers tighten on his blazer, her confession slipping out into the space between them. I don't hate. I actually like being in contact with you, Minori-kun." The bystander is gone. Minori looks down at the girl tucked against his chest, realizing that for all his talk of being a protector, he's the one being saved. Her racing heart is a mirror of his own, but in the middle of all the panic, there's a strange, terrifying sense of peace. He's being pampered, and he never wants it to stop. The doors eventually open, and the crowd pours out. But the heat of that moment doesn't dissipate. His mind is a complete wreck, a tangle of her scent and the lingering pressure of her hands. That night, sleep is impossible. They end up back on the phone, talking for hours just to keep the feeling alive. Two people who found a home in a crowded train car.